Alright, so in this video we are going to talk about events. So what are events? So HTML events are things that happen to HTML elements. So when JavaScript is used in HTML pages, JavaScript can react on these events. So when the page loads, it is called an event. When the user clicks a button, that click to is an event. Other examples include events like pressing any key, closing a window, resizing a window, sliders, and so on. Developers use this event to execute JavaScript coded responses, which cause buttons to close windows, messages to be displayed to the users, data to be validated, and any other type of response imaginable. Some of these events are, for example, on-click event. So this is a mouse event and provokes any logic defined. If the user clicks on the element it is bound to. Again, another is on key up. This event is a keyboard event and executes instructions whenever a key is released after pressing. You have on mouse over, on mouse out, on change, on load, on focus, on blur, and so many other different events that are happening in the browser. Alright, so let's see that in action now. So we are going to see three ways how can we uh, invoke the handlers associated with the events. So event is when user is interacting, and then when user interacts with the DOM, what are we going to do? So that job is being done by the event handler. In other programming language, we also call them as event listeners. Okay, so let's do that. So this is a simple page that we are going to use for this demo, and it has one header which is jQuery event. Then we have an h4, bind and unbind, and then an image. That's it. All right. So now what are we going to do? The first way of doing it is using the HTML. So let us create a simple function, and I'm going to call it click me. Okay, and here we are going to use this JavaScript function which is alert, which exists on the window object, and here we are going to say you clicked me. That's it. All right, so now we want to bind this function to, let's say, this jQuery event element. The way we are going to do that is, this is our object and we are going to use the HTML way. So we say on click, which is a property, and in the previous video I mentioned that on object there are a lot of properties. So one such property is on click, and here we are going to say, hey, whenever I'm going to click on this, just invoke this function. So let me save this file as well, and now this is being reloaded, and if I now click on this, you see you clicked me. All right, so this is the message that is being displayed. All right, if I don't have this, right, let me just remove this property from here, save it again. All right, and if I now click on it, nothing would happen. So we use events and event handler to make our websites interactable. Okay, so we have done the HTML way. Now let's do it by the JavaScript way, and for that I'm going to first save this element into a variable, and the way I'm going to do is I'm going to say const el. So what I'm going to find out, I'm going to save that into this variable el. And how can I identify it using JavaScript? So there are a lot of ways, like, if you say document dot get element, so you could see get element by id, get elements by class name, get elements by name, get elements by tag name. This sounds familiar to people who have done Selenium. Right there we have all these methods: by id, by class name, by name, and so on. So you can go by this. So you are going to say get element by id, right, and herein you are going to provide this id, right? But I'll go by the css selector way, and to do that you have to say query selector, okay, and herein you have to pass in the object which we want to find. So we want to find this, and I usually prefer to also have the element type in here and not just the IDs and the class. So I'm going to pick this. This is how we are going to create the CSS selector of this. So now we have identified this element, and the next thing that we are going to do is, now there are two ways through which you can invoke these events. So the first one is we are going to say el dot on click. So on click, as you could see, this the on click property returns the on click event handler code on the current element. Okay, so let's complete that, and this property would be equal to click me, and now I add three more before you. All right, just to show you that, yeah, now this time this particular message is being invoked. So let me save this, and this is being reloaded. I click on this and you could see that we get a new message. That's a second way. What is the next way? So the other way possible is that I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to again remove this, okay, so that we see a different message and we can confirm that yes, this change is because of the code that we have written. The next way is we are going to say el dot add event listener. This is how you do it the JavaScript way, and here you have to provide the first argument is the event, right, which is click, and next is the function is the which is the event handler. So event handler is click me, so you have to provide this. Let me save this now. Page is being reloaded. I click on this and you see this message now. All right, so this is by the JavaScript way. Now we are talking about jQuery, and we are going to now see how can we do this using jQuery. So we are going to use one method which is on. So on attaches an event handler function for one or more events to the selected elements. There is one more variation of that, and we are going to see that after this. So let me now comment this as well, and we also don't require this. So the way we are going to write is we are going to say dollar, and then we are going to pass in the selector, and the selector in our case is this. So let me just grab this. All right, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to say on, and it accepts a few parameters, but we will focus only on two. The first one is the event, which is going to be click, and the second one is the function. All right, so we have already created a function, so I'm just going to use it, and let me now again add three exclamation marks. Let me save this, okay, and if I click on it, so now you see that this is how we can do it using the jQuery way. Okay, great. Now there is a shorthand available for that, but before we move on, so I would like to show you this. So if I click on it again, and I'll keep on getting this, but if I just want this event to happen only once, right, what do I need to do? So the other variation of this method is, so I just have to change this on to one, and one attach a handler to an event for the elements. The handler is executed, that's the most important part. The handler is executed at most once per element per event type. So if I just save this, the page is being reloaded. I click on this, I get this, but when I click on the next time, nothing is happening because this handler will be executed only once. So let me change it back to one on, sorry, and Now we can keep on hitting the button and get this alert. Great. Now there's a shorthand available for that, and to write the shorthand, this is what you have to do. So jQuery has simplified things a lot. So now instead of defining this on method and then providing the event type, we can simply say, hey, I'm referring to click, right? So it's a method, and that's it. So if you do this, save it, and let me, yeah, now save it and click on it, I still get the same thing. Okay, so there's a shorthand, and that is applicable to all the events there in jQuery. So there's always a method available for it. Okay, so now let's do some more things with this. So we have bind the event. Next is unbind the event. So how can I unbind the event, right? So for that, let's now do one thing. We can, right, so I can also show you one more thing in here. So we are going to create our function in here. So let me write the function in here, and you can say just use this in here, right? So this is a callback. So instead of defining the function here and then using it, we can define the function here itself directly. All right, so this is done now, and page is being loaded, and you could see that we get the same result back. And I've already covered this anonymous functions and function expression syntax in my JavaScript series. I'll show you one more thing. So this is very important, the lexical binding in JavaScript. So if you change this function to, let's say, fat arrow, okay, and you want to say this, so what does this mean? This means that this particular thing returns a collection, all right? So whichever element we are working on, so this refers to that particular element. Okay, in our case we are getting only one element back, so this would refer to this particular thing. All right, so if I want to turn off or unbind an event uh, with an element, so all you have to do is you have to use this off method, and you're going to provide this click in here. Okay, if you do so and you click on it, you get the message, right? But the event is still bound to this element. And why so? Because of the lexical bounding. So if you just change this to normal function, and if you save this now, let me click this, you get this, right? But now on further clicks, this is now unbound from this element. All right, okay, so there is one more thing that we have to understand in here, and that is the trigger method. So what does trigger method do? So trigger method executes all handlers and behaviors attached to the matched elements for the given element type. And let's see an example of it. And if you are working on Cypress, this is going to help you a lot. Let's see that in action. So I'm just going to comment this out, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on this image, all right, and I'm going to hide that image. All right, let's see that in action. So if I just say $sign, and the way we are going to identify this an image element with the ID image, so let's write the selector image hash image, and let's create a click method on it. All right, function, and here, and don't worry about the method that I'm writing in here. We'll cover that in the upcoming videos. We'll say this and dot hide. So what will happen now? Let's see that. So I'm going to save it. Page is being loaded. I click on it, this image, and it's hidden. Okay, so when I click on this, I've hidden this image. So let me reload this page. So the thing is, I had to interact. So now you could see that I have to interact with this image, and then this particular thing is happening. All right, what if I want to execute this method, all right, without interacting with it. And that's what we can do with the help of trigger method in jQuery. And the syntax is pretty simple, straightforward. All you have to do is, let me grab this, and you have to say trigger. That's it. All right. So what will happen is, when I execute this, when I save this, on the right hand side, you could see that because of this line, right, this method would be executed automatically. It's being triggered. All right. So let me just save this, and you could see that this will disappear because trigger has invoked this method. All right. Great. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.